unfortunately, there are a lot of brands out there that actually just put terpenes, which are, again, is like not even Sunny D, but like the flavoring that goes into Sunny D. And then they call it live resin.
Because it tastes like it.
They say it tastes like it.
Hi friends, welcome back. It's me, Jerilyn, and Joel, co-founder of Modern Herb Co. Today we're going to be talking about what the heck is resin. So resin seems to be an important thing. What is it?
Yeah, so resin or live resin.
Okay.
What that,
Live.
Yeah, kind of to, I guess, break it down generally, there's like two parts of that. So live, whether it's live resin or live rosin, a lot of people get those two confused, and we can touch on that. But live means fresh frozen or like locked in plant. So instead of like chopping down a cannabis plant and hanging it up and it like dries and transforms,
Right.
what we do is we actually, in the field right there, when the plant is fresh, it gets chopped down, and within 90 minutes at the max I've seen, we are trimming it and immediately freezing it.
Gotcha.
So you're like locking in all of the goodness that you want in the plant and not
Right.
letting it like sequester out.
Okay.
So we're like locking all that in. So that's live. That's the first part. That's super important. We fresh freeze our cannabis inputs. And then resin, it means a kind of distinction between either full spectrum or a distillate product. And what that means is kind of like fresh squeezed orange juice. It's got like all the pulp and extra goodness that we know our body, you just drink it and you're like, that's just good for me.
Yeah.
That feels good. And then there's Sunny D, right? It has some semblance of like it used to be an orange juice, but really it's been so bastardized and like gone through so much processing that it's like barely.
It's not freaking orange juice.
Yeah, it's like barely something. So it's like that's the distinction is we've got like a fresh frozen thing that we're locking in all that goodness.
Yeah.
And then instead of taking that and making like the concentrated version, we're making that full spectrum process. So yeah, that's the main distinction of live resin.
Full spectrum. That's a fun term. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds to me too like it's just yours is more like natural and holistic. And it's like, it sounds like fresh versus like the processed version to me, if I'm like putting it in that space. Would you say that's kind of how it?
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. And then I think also it's like with live resin, you can't fake the funk. It's like good in and good out. So with live resin products, we can't like start with low quality inputs and then make a good extract.
Right.
You have to start with the highest quality inputs. Like I'm going to take like sour pineapple flower from East Fork Cultivars. It's an organic farm we work with down in Southern Oregon. We start with their material, and we're going to, when we make a live resin, I'm taking that and like concentrating that flavor. So I have to have good flavor, good profile to concentrate that out. Whereas with a distillate product, that Sunny D equivalent,
Yeah.
generally you're kind of using like lawn trimmings in a sense. You're using like it's a byproduct of making other products, and they'll take whatever's left and then they put it through distillation to kind of think like maybe another example would be like, like a craft wine versus making moonshine.
Yeah.
If you're going to make moonshine, you don't care what's in it. You don't care if it had, frankly, like mold or pesticides or all this other stuff, because through the distillation process, you remove all that and you just have like THC or just CBD at the end of it.
Yeah.
Whereas that fresh squeezed is going to have all the extra terpenes, flavonoids, ketones, esters, all these other good things that make full spectrum. Is like not just the cannabinoid, it's the cannabinoid and it's like a symphony, and the symphony sounds better when it's all there.
Yeah. So instead of like cutting something down, letting it, like you cut a bunch of stuff down at once, let it dry out, and then make something, you're cutting smaller amounts so they're fresh, and then make the best product with that. Kind of like if you want a really good dish, if you have poor ingredients, even the best chef is not going to be able to make that as
100%.
good as like with fresh ingredients.
Exactly.
Okay, so I hear you that you create the fresh squeezed orange juice version instead of the Sunny D processed version. And so it tastes more natural and has more flavor in there that is natural flavor. But what are the effects of that, of like the actual high or the feeling in your body?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So it's kind of like, because we're concentrating down the raw like expression of that plant itself, like that strain, you're going to get the naturally occurring effects of like if you smoke that flower itself. So it's the closest thing you could have to flower. But because you've got all of those cannabinoids, ketones, esters, all the goodness in the fresh squeezed orange juice.
Right.
It's going to make the experience be much more like more slowly up and last longer. So I like to say it like broadens, prolongs, and directs the high.
Nice.
So I'm going to be like coming up longer. It's going to feel a little bit longer, and I'm going to like feel an indica or sativa, maybe your up or down effect because of that. Whereas distillate is much more like I ramp up and then I crash down. And you ever have like a distillate edible or like distillate cart, you can kind of get that like post-high headache. For me, it's like because I just like it's like an undifferentiated generic high. I'm just kind of like up and down, and I'm kind of just like I'm feeling high, as opposed to like this directed thing, because that's how the plant naturally was. You know? You don't just like go and smoke THC plants. You smoke cannabis plants that have all of that full expression there. Yeah,
it kind of reminds me of if I was to eat like an apple versus like a Snickers bar. Like I'm going to have a really big high crash and not feel as good. Otherwise I'm going to have like, I'll get that sugar little intake.
You get all that
but then
THC
more of like,
up.
Yeah. Okay. Man, that's beautiful. Okay. So how is it made?
So the live part, again, is that like fresh frozen. You have to freeze it within 90 minutes. And I say that because I've been on a lot of harvests over the last 10 years. And if you don't freeze that product within 90 minutes, it starts to decompose and frankly like smell like rotten lettuce. And you cannot filter, remove, get that out. Your cannabis is destroyed. So we take so much effort in like literally bringing freezer trucks on the farm, freeze it immediately. In some cases we have to like nitrogen tunnel it, and like it's a very complex process, as opposed to just like milling down a field to make biomass to make the distillate, you know? So, and then the other piece is I've got to freeze it immediately, but also I have to trim it to near smokable bud quality. So like cannabis has like the cola, right? And then you've got all these leaves around it, we call fan leaves. If I leave those fan leaves on and then I process the material, it's going to have chlorophyll and it's just not going to taste good. So we actually will put it through trimming before we freeze it. That's like our 90-minute process. You strip off the buds from the plant. Now I have buds with leaves, and then we trim off all the leaves, and now I have like trimmed little nuggets that then get fresh frozen.
And you do that all within 90 minutes?
Yeah, so it's a lot of team, it's a lot of folks on the ground. Mainly, we've tried to do it like automated, but even if we're doing 150,000 pound harvest, generally that means like 75 to 100 people, and we're just like stripping and going.
I'm just curious, do you know with like other places and stuff, or how long other people wait? Will it be days, or like?
If you're going like more biomass for distillate, they just have like big combine harvesters that are like you're like harvesting like hay or something. And they're just literally going over it and harvesting that material, chumping it all up, and it goes into big sacks. So they're like completely automated. I hope someone figures it out, but no one's figured out how to automate fresh frozen plant harvesting. Or at least we have just not wanted to sacrifice quality. So we just do it all by hand. Make sure we're passing QC as that's coming in. I could go into stories that I've personally had with that, but it's just
next podcast, maybe.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like love that goes into just getting it off the plant and fresh frozen. Then we have to keep it frozen the whole time. We hold it in cold storage at negative 20 degrees.
Chilly.
Until we run it. And then run it, that means generally butane hash oil. So butane is a solvent we use. And butane is a great solvent because it like really strips off all the cannabinoids and terpenes, and it separates the plant matter from the cannabinoids and terpenes, leaves the plant matter behind that we don't want, which is like the chlorophyll, the carcinogenic stuff from the plant, and it just gets the cannabinoids and terpenes that are delivering the effect that we're after.
Okay, so butane separates those things. Is that a safe thing, the butane?
Yeah, so the reason why it's a good solvent is butane actually boils at 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So meaning it wants to come out of the extract pretty easily.
Okay.
So then we put it through a purge process where we put it in some ovens, and we are purging out that butane, and because it boils at 40 degrees Fahrenheit, it actually comes out like pretty easily.
Okay.
And then we test it rigorously and test it to the parts per million. So all of our input tests, we ensure that it's less, we're testing to the part per million that there's no butane in that extract. You're generally exposed to more butane. This is a fun fact, like lighting a joint with a Zippo lighter than you are, ingesting a live resin product, because there's like down to the parts per million, like almost no butane at all in a live resin product, whereas you're getting a lot using like a butane lighter or something there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you make it safer.
Yeah. And so it's like you're using butane for that process, but then you're ensuring all of it comes out, before you make the finished good.
Making sure. So I heard you talking about the farm that you use in Oregon, in Southern Oregon. Is that farm, so are you guys like an organic product or?
Yeah, so our inputs generally are organic, right? The flower we're sourcing, we work with a variety of farms in Oregon. Horn Creek Hemp, Forest Creek, Infinite Tree, East Fork Cultivars is some of our, I've personally worked with them for almost 10 years. They're like,
loyal.
They're good folks, and really care about the product that they're producing. So we're, thankful we get to produce and work with farmers that care about that product. Because again, like that energy, that love that goes into it, that's exactly what we're concentrating. So if bad is in there, it's going to get concentrated, to get too woo-woo with it. But they are organically certified, USDA organic. The part where our extracts no longer can be technically organic is because we're using butane hash oil, we're using a solvent.
Gotcha.
That's where we lose the organic certification.
Yeah. But that's just not you guys. Like everyone has
that's
to.
That's anyone, yeah.
So in order to get weed, you have to do that.
Exactly. And really, it's kind of a tough thing to get anything cannabis or hemp related with the FDA and the USDA to like certify organic is kind of a tough bar. Mm-hmm. But generally, we work with farms that follow organic practices. Yeah. What's that mean? No pesticides, because we would have that show up in our product.
Awesome. And then you do the testing to make sure there are no pesticides in these things. So okay. Yep. And then why should someone, you've kind of touched on this, but why should someone want live resin opposed to not, right?
Yeah.
Is that a good question?
No, that's a great question. I mean, it's something I've been living the last decade, I guess, really. But generally, it's like, do you want something more, whether it's therapeutic or recreational, whatever you're going for? I think everyone comes back to like flower is our favorite way to consume hemp or cannabis, right? And a full spectrum extract, whether it's live resin or live rosin, is going to give that more well-rounded experience rather than a punchy up and down. And so the only thing maybe that someone would want to avoid live resin for is it does have, the more cannabis flavor, like true plant profile. But in terms of like the therapeutic use,
just eat it. It tastes
real.
good. It's nature.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm fully convinced that live resin is just better for you. Is everyone doing this? It sounds like not. And I guess I'm like, why not?
Yeah, I mean, largely speaking, no. It is the exception, not the rule. Most brands and manufacturers choose distillate, right? Sunny D is cheaper to make, markedly cheaper, easier to make, easier to scale. They can just make a big vat of THC and add in whatever botanical flavored terpene they want, make a million strawberry vapes. With live resin, you have to have the frozen inputs. You have to keep it frozen. That fresh squeezed orange juice is much harder to make. So like first thing is a lot of folks just use distillate, and using live resin is kind of its own kind of more coveted thing for manufacturers to use. Beyond that, for the people that advertise live resin on their products, unfortunately, there are a lot of brands out there that actually just put terpenes, which again is like not even Sunny D, but like the flavoring that goes into Sunny D, and then they call it live resin
because it tastes like it.
They say it tastes like it. Frankly. Okay. Yeah, it really what it is there's a couple terpene manufacturers that recognize that people associate live resin with higher quality, and frankly, it's just the raw truth. To sell more of their terpenes, they started labeling them live resin terpenes. There's nothing else to it. It's just a marketing gimmick, and it really impacts brands like us or farms we work with, because unfortunately then these other brands and manufacturers start buying these live resin terpenes. I call them live resin terpenes, but they buy these live resin terpenes, they add them to their distillate, vapes or edibles, and then they market their product as live resin.
Wow.
And that's a bummer for us because they don't work as well.
Right. And
So then maybe a consumer tries it and they're like, oh, I tried live resin. It was just like the other one.
Right.
Or it's just, they're then putting a lower price on something because it's much cheaper to buy the taste of Sunny D than fresh squeezed orange juice. So
Yeah.
there are some brands in the space. Modern Herb Co., we've always used, real, authentic live resin in our edibles and our vapes since day one. And we work with and know of other brands that do use live resin. But I would say, genuinely, like for the brands in the open market, at least in our hemp space, like less than 5% of those advertising live resin or live diamonds or anything like that, less than 5% actually have live resin.
And I just have one follow-up question on that. Is there a way as a consumer I can like look on a label and tell the difference if someone's using it, actually using live resin, and someone who's claiming to, but it's really just the additive?
Yeah, no, I love that question. It's one, I think first and foremost, trust the brand you're working with, right? You can look at the quality of the manufacturer and other things that they're doing transparently or not can help you kind of make that first distinction.
Gotcha.
But there are a couple things you can do if you're motivated. You can look at the back, try to pull up that COA if they have it. If the COA has significant quantities of CBDA or THCA or any acidic cannabinoid, to touch on that, it's like when it's frozen, it's in the acidic form, THCA, and when I convert it, it goes to delta-9 THC or CBD, not CBDA. So if it's still in that frozen form, that CBDA form, then it was live resin. So you're looking for CBDA or THCA on the COA itself, the test result, or if you look on the back panel, you'll have it'll say on the ingredients. And sometimes we'll outright say it. They'll say, oh, it's a live resin vape. And then you look on the back and it's delta-8 and live resin terpenes.
Gotcha.
I'll say it again. There's no such thing as a live resin terpene.
Okay.
So it has to have true live resin in the product.
Amazing. Well, thank you for that clarification. Okay. I think that's all today. Also, if you have a question about the CEO, what do you call that?
The COA.
Yes. We were talking about that in the previous episode.
That's right.
Okay. Bye, cuties.